So I saw this tweet the other day, and again this morning, talking about how Democrats have pitched the idea of creating a shadow cabinet to help thwart President Trump's agenda. And of course, we see that the shadow EPA admin will be Bill Nye, the shadow Secretary of Commerce, Mark Cuban, the shadow AG, Letitia James, the shadow Secretary of Education, Governor Katie Hobbs, shadow Secretary of Homeland Security, John Fetterman's wife, and the shadow Secretary of Veteran Affairs, Jon Stewart. Now, I don't know where they're pulling this from. Leading report seems to be right most of the time, but again, I don't know where this is coming from. But let's talk about this, okay? First off, what is a shadow cabinet? In some parliamentary systems like Australia and the UK, they call it a shadow government. And what it is basically it's opposition. So in these other countries, you don't have a two-party system. You have multiple parties. And in a lot of cases, what you have is a coalition government. This was very big during World War II. The ruling party, Winston Churchill's party, since he was PM, wasn't the majority or wasn't 50% plus one. It was the majority, but it still needed the other parties to actually help rule. So let's look at Canada, for example. So Canada has two large parties, and then I think there's two or three other ones. If I'm wrong, correct me. Please always appreciate any comments, guys. So you've got the Liberals who are in charge right now. And then, so if there's a Secretary of Housing or Minister of Housing, they have ministers instead of secretaries. Then the shadow Secretary of Housing is a member of the Conservative Party who voices opposition to whatever rules and regulations the Minister of Housing is trying to create. That's their job, to be the vocal opposition. And if a party switch happens, if a ruling switch happens, they are usually the presumptive nominee to be that next minister. Here, this is why this is incredibly dumb. First off, there is no such thing as shadow cabinet here in the United States. The cabinet itself is not a constitutional thing. It's not codified in the Constitution. The cabinet was convened by President George Washington 2 years into his first term, where he called all the executive heads to meet with him. The executive heads are codified in the U.S. Code. Every single time that a new executive department is created, there is a secretary of that department. And it's added to the list of who becomes president when, after which people die. So to act like you can just create a shadow cabinet lies right there. Okay. Finally, if you were going to say, okay, these 6 people, they're going to have another job and they're going to be advisors to, if Chuck Schumer, I believe he's the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer is going to hire Bill Nye as an advisor on environmental protection laws. You could do that. There are no rules, as far as I'm aware of. I've done a little bit of looking, but there's no rules saying that you can't hire people to advise you on law. That's what a lobbyist is. But what you cannot do is you can't have a take your kid to work day for Pam Bondi, who has to sit there and let Letitia James come into all her meetings. Like, that's not going to happen. You're not going to sit there. Pam Bondi is not going to sit there and say, so this is what we want to do. Hey, Letitia James, what do you think? First off, Letitia James might be getting disbarred soon. She has clearly committed mortgage fraud and is going to be in a lot of trouble. You're not going to be able to have Governor Katie Hobbs, who is the governor right now. I mean, she's got a damn job to do as the chief executive of her state. And you're saying that, oh, we're just going to take her from that job or she's going to do that job and this job. I think this whole thing, all of this doesn't make any sense. This is just a way for the Democrats to continue to try and thwart President Trump's agenda. It's ridiculous. It's not legal. It's not even capable of happening. It just blows my mind that they could sit there and think that this is a good idea. But this just shows that you have people in charge or people assisting the people in charge that don't actually know the rules of our government. They sit there and they want to be more like the UK, and so they sit there and be like, oh, well, they have these positions. Let's have them ourselves. But that's not the way they work. That's why we have elections. That's why our Constitution requires a new House of Representatives every 2 years. A third of our senators are elected every 2 years. The president is elected every 4 years. It's because continuity of government needs to exist. And what they don't need is when we vote in November, we don't need to be worried that our vote is going to be nullified because they're going to have a strong opposition government. Like that's bullshit. Our vote should be what matters. We voted for Donald Trump. We voted for the cuts. We voted for this change. We voted for change that matters. And it should fucking count for something. Everyone, I hope you learned something. This is a little bit more of a rant, but I hope you learned something today. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, @KingsDividers_. We'll see you next time.